Tonight on Q2, a rift over rentals.
It's the rights of the people in this area, it's the business owners in this area, and it's just the life and blood of this whole community.
Red Lodge looking to clamp down on short-term rentals, a decision that is already drawing several critics. Plus, the price of disaster.
We'll get through this together one way or another, but it's difficult figuring out how to get through it because we don't know.
We dive into the personal and financial impact still being felt today, 1 year after the historic floods. And history in Helena.
I love and support the efforts of the next generations. That's what this park is here for, forever generations.
We'll take you inside a landmark lawsuit filed by several Montana teenagers and explain why it could have national implications. The MTN News starts right now.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 530 News.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday. I'm Russ Riesinger. First tonight, housing troubles in tourist towns. Red Lodge is looking to cap the number of short-term rental properties that can exist in that community. The latest in a growing list of Montana cities and towns trying to tackle similar housing issues. Tonight, our Charlie Kleps dives into the issue and the impact it could have.
The city of Red Lodge is a community that thrives off of its tourism, but it soon could become more challenging to find a place to stay here as the city is reviewing a potential cap on short-term rentals within city limits. People visit Red Lodge for a variety of reasons.
It could be to skiing, Beartooth Pass, going hiking, weddings.
Those reasons mean a lot to Chelsea Tupin, who owns and operates a rental company in town called Red Lodge Reservations.
All we really want to do is make sure that everyone's happy, and that includes, again, the owners of the properties who we consider our partners, the guests that are coming in.
She manages 19 different short-term rentals, most of which reside within city limits. Her business, like many others in town, relies heavily on tourism.
We have a really sensitive economy here that does thrive off of tourism. And it's not saying that's the only industry here, but tourism is the backbone that holds it together.
However, the city, which currently has 180 short-term rentals, is now looking at putting a cap on the industry, a decision that Tupin believes could really harm the entire community.
It's the rights of the people in this area, it's the business owners in this area, and it's just the life and blood of this whole community.
I think the goal was to examine the issue and try to put some guardrails on it.
Red Lodge Mayor Kristen Cogswell says that the decision isn't final and that the proposal has some allowed growth built into the potential cap.
The current proposal would allow an additional 50% more units. We've given it a pretty comfortable margin so that it will allow some growth, and then we'll have more data to look at it.
Cogswell says that the primary motivation behind the change would be to find a balance between homes in the area available for visitors and still having places available for people to live.
We just want to make sure that we have the tools in place to continue to guide the growth of this community.
But Tupin argues that the tourism economy in Red Lodge can be fragile.
We already have so many different risk factors, so I think trying to limit something that is already got natural limitations to it, it just seems like a risky idea.
In Red Lodge, Charlie Kleps, MTN News.
$46 million in public assistance, $13 million in federal loans, and hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue to businesses around the state. That's just a snapshot of the personal and financial devastation caused by the historic floods of last June. Well, as we mark the anniversary of that disaster, MTN's Jackie Coffin looks deeper at the cost still being felt by Montanans in the flood zone.
It was a year ago that I visited the Wilcox homestead here near Absaroka, and I was walking through this area in fishing waders in near chest-high waters. Coming back, I found out how the family and their livelihood is still being affected by that flood.
I've been up every night for a week at 4 in the morning because it was 4 in the morning when I woke up hearing the roar of the river.
1 year can make a dramatic difference. The difference of a river, the difference of a road. For the Wilcox family who run a multi-generational ranch and tourism business, it's the difference of a major disaster.
You don't get over it.
Dealing with silt, debris, and crumbling riverbanks, Wanda Wilcox says one of the most enduring and frustrating parts of rebuilding after the flood is trying to find help.
The only help they had was an SBA. So I had to mortgage my house so we could get the SBA loan to get the money.
Wilcox's experience is similar to others living in the aftermath of the flood, bouncing between government and private agencies trying to figure out aid for damaged and destroyed property, only to find dead-end roads and debt.
A year later, we're still in the same boat. We did get some funding, but yet you have to come up with the money to have the government funding.
And the cost of the flood has been huge.
I think that pain is quite real.
Montana Disaster Emergency Services says $46 million of public assistance is spread out in nearly 200 projects across the flood zone. And unique in this type of disaster, says economist Pat Barkey, is the impact on businesses.
It either destroyed the businesses literally, or it destroyed access to the businesses.
Impacts to Montana businesses range from multi-million-dollar losses at the Sibanya-Stillwater mine to losses of tourism and agriculture seasons throughout several small communities. But Barkey says the flood has also created jobs.
Anybody with an excavator, anybody in road building.
As for Wilcox, the need for repairs is urgent as the river changed course, running closer to her guest house.
I just want to hang on to everybody's hand and say we're all in the same boat. We'll get through this together one way or another, but it's difficult figuring out how to get through it because we don't know.
Near Absorki, Jackie Coffin, MTN News.
Well, although we'll continue to watch these showers and thunderstorms drift through the eastern counties through about midnight before they exit out into the Dakotas. One of the next areas concerned is actually going to be to the south. Our neighbors in the south down into Wyoming there, a flood watch for tomorrow through Friday, primarily concerned over the Wind River Basin there. Some expectations or estimates of precip there, anywhere from an inch to an inch and a half possible down towards Riverton area, a half inch to an inch just south of the Cody area. So if you have friends and relatives down into that part of Wyoming, you may want to keep them in mind the next 24 to 48 hours. Things we're going to talk about later. We got 4 nice days teed up for you through Sunday, warmer each day through Sunday, and then late afternoon showers and thunderstorms return Sunday through Tuesday. We'll have the details later in the show.
A landmark trial entered its 3rd day in Helena this morning. That lawsuit, Held versus Montana, includes 16 plaintiffs between the ages of 5 and 22, arguing that the state has not held its constitutional obligation to a clean and healthful environment by investing in oil, gas, and coal development. It's the nation's first youth-led climate change trial. Tonight, our Kelsey Marison dives deeper into the case and the impact it could have.
This week, Montana's youth are taking over the Capitol in Helena for a first-of-its-kind trial, battling it out over constitutional rights related to climate change.
Without a doubt, Montanans love the land.
It's no secret the Treasure State is a haven for outdoor enthusiasts.
Wildlife tours are kind of our bread and butter.
Tyreen Riedel works for Gardner-based Yellowstone Wild Tours. To them, last year's flooding signaled climate change kicking down Montana's door, and it inspired new practices to combat its effects. The company now only brings food in reusable containers and composts or recycles any leftovers.
We've always taken an approach of being gentle with our environment. But I will also say that we can always be doing better.
That's a thought on many people's minds this week as 16 Montana youth take on the state in the first ever constitutional climate trial in the U.S.
They are taking a stand at such a young age to fight for their right to enjoy the same things that their ancestors, grandparents, parents are able to.
Hearing the testimony from the youth, they're just so inspiring, eloquent.
Carrie Kimball is the executive director of the Montana Environmental Information Center, a nonprofit environmental group that has a member testifying in the trial. During opening statements, the state argued the emissions from Montana are too small to make a difference, and the Treasure State is more of a spectator in the grand scheme of things.
Montana's emissions are simply too minuscule to make any difference. Climate change is a global issue.
While the plaintiffs argued climate change is against their constitutional rights.
Each person shall maintain and improve a clean and healthful environment for present and future generations. Montana's overall greenhouse gas emissions have steadily declined. Montana's emissions are in line with or better than U.S. averages.
The trial is set to conclude on June 23rd, with eyes around the world watching, including several right here in our backyard.
The Constitution does read that we have a right to a clean and healthy environment. And I love and support the efforts of the next generations. That's what this park is here for, forever generations.
In Billings, Kelsey Marison, MTN News.
Still to come on the MTN 530 News here on Q2, the Billings Clinic announces Montana's first ever residency dedicated to training new psychiatrists. We'll have the details next. And in sports, coaches from all around the country will be flocking to Lockwood next week. We'll tell you why in just a bit.
Montana ranks 45th among all states in terms of access to psychiatrists. And as the need for mental health services rises in the state, Billings Clinic is turning this building into the first and only psychiatric residency program here in the state, hoping to meet that growing need. Fourth-year psychiatry resident Dr. Russell Allerton always knew he'd end up in a rural area.
I like wide open, quiet places, so I've always wanted to be a rural doctor.
And in states like Montana and Wyoming, where suicide rates are among the highest in the nation, he's certainly needed.
We just, in general, we lack doctors in the state of Montana, and that's especially true for psychiatrists and mental health providers in general.
Dr. Jared Bozeman is the program director for Billings Clinic's new psychiatry residency program. What the hospital hopes will be a new pipeline for doctors to counter a growing psychiatrist shortage and enormous demand for mental health providers.
The residency program was kind of the best of both worlds.
Allerton spent 12 years training to become a psychiatrist. He spent the first 2 years of his residency in Seattle and completed the last 2 here in Billings.
The residency is already doing its job. I'm staying here. I'm one of the first.
And Allerton's story is one Billings Clinic hopes to emulate. The hospital just received their accreditation for the program. Nationwide, mental health care is rising. According to the federal government, the country will be short as many as 31,000 mental health care workers within just a few years. And Montana is expected to be down 80 psychiatrists by 2030.
So we're hoping that by training more psychiatrists within the state of Montana, they'll stay in Billings and then Montana.
Even in residency, I mean, having all 4 years of the program here is going to substantially increase the amount of mental health professionals in the state just by itself.
Once Allerton graduates, he'll continue to treat patients through Billings Clinic as a permanent fixture of their team.
I'm just pleased that we get to be part of improving access to care here.
In Billings, Alina Howder, MTN News.
Keith's joining us again, and more nice weather out there today.
Yeah, after we clear the storms out, I think we've got 4 nice days teed up. We'll have the details after the break.